Well, I appreciate it. I approached Al last week. I heard this was coming up for some consideration. Appreciate you having me and letting me speak my piece. You know, people used to say, Alan, why are you so against marijuana? You know, well, the state police pays you to say what you say about marijuana. They used to say that. Maybe that was a valid argument then. But I've been 5 or 6 years removed from the state police, and they're no longer paying me for what I'm about to say. I get no money or endorsement for this. I'm just speaking on behalf of kids in this community. The pro-marijuana movement is a powerful movement. I've seen it firsthand. When I first, my state police career, toward the end, I was the marijuana police for the state. I was horribly unpopular. Before I was done, I'd prosecuted cases in 88 of our 120 counties. So I've been around. This is not just a county thing. I despise marijuana. I make no bones about it. I'm not going to hide from it. It is what it is. The reason I am, when I first started doing my job, I was open to it. I'd heard the same arguments that God put it on the planet for us to enjoy and use as medicine. I've heard all these things, that marijuana will decrease opioid use, that it will make our place safer. I've heard all that, and I've just not seen it. The other side says it, but they've not backed it up. But what I noticed was I would go in home after home after home of people who were on welfare, on the draw, who weren't work, who didn't want to work. And I began to ask myself, do only lazy people grow marijuana, or does growing marijuana just make you lazy? And I saw over a course of time the other side and their movement, you know, and you all know this. I mean, in 2013-14, the hemp movement. We're going to help the farmers, Mike. We're going to say, oh, we don't want medical now. We don't want medical. We're just going to help. We just want to help the farmers. So the hemp movement. Well, the hemp movement's come and gone. Very few farmers got any money off of it. Yeah. Jim Canna came in here, bought up a building in Clark County. They left a lot of farmers empty-handed that chose to invest in that movement, and they left out of here. Their building burnt. They drew the insurance money, and they moved out of state, and they're no longer here to help the farmers. Well, now we've migrated to medicine, but yet the people who are pushing the medicine, and pardon me, I'm a little passionate, and I don't want to sound like a jerk. A lot of times presentation goes a long way and takes away from what you're saying. But my kids used to joke, don't get him started because he don't know when to hush. And I apologize. I don't mean for my passion to sound like I'm mad. I really care about this topic. But now the medical folks are saying, well, no, we don't want recreational use. We're just here for the medical aspect of it. You know, it's just really hard for me to believe that. Because I've heard these things time and time again about, oh, we're just here for the medical aspect of it. Well, let's talk about it. I've got some talking points, if you will. In Proverbs chapter 18, verse 15, not to do a little preaching today, but basically says, the ear of the wise seeketh knowledge. That means we need to learn from the other people's mistakes. What's going on in these other states that we can learn from, and maybe we don't want this here. So, you know, this is an industry, oftentimes they don't have the science to back up their claim. Number one, marijuana negatively affects the growing brain. That's why I'm here. If you're 35 and you want to go hit a glass bomb that you bought at the service station up the road, you go for it. 35, it don't matter. But the problem is your brain is growing and developing until you're 25 years old. And what I've seen is when you start smoking marijuana at a very young age, it drastically affects your outcome in life. Think about it. Who do you know that started smoking weed early in their life? Where are they now? Have they had a successful life? You know, I don't want to disparage people that have a drug problem. I don't want to disparage or disrespect people who call this medicine. I just blatantly disagree. Let me throw some things at you that I collected. Long-term effects of marijuana by the New England Journal of Medicine says that the marijuana addiction alters brain development, poor educational outcomes, cognitive impairment, and increased risk of chronic psychosis disorders. The government publication that I found dating back to 2015 by the American Psychology Association goes on to say it also adds to higher dropout rates, increased welfare dependence, and greater unemployment. 1 in 16 who try marijuana will get addicted to it. Yet the other side says marijuana is not addictive. I have observed many a life that makes me differ from that opinion. Teenagers who smoke marijuana daily, this is from the Lancet article, Journal of Psychiatry. Teenagers who smoke marijuana daily are over 60% less likely to complete high school than those who never use. Facts. I mean, these aren't opinions. These are studies that they've concluded. Youth who regularly use marijuana are 7 times more likely to attempt suicide. You know, we have more mental health counselors today. We have more medication set aside for youth that have mental illness than ever before in our country. But yet we have more mental illness now than ever before. Could it be that because more young people are using marijuana? So point number 1, the reason I can't stand it, the reason it hurts the growing brain. And I'm for the 2,800 kids in the county that can't be here to speak and against this movement of medical marijuana. Second thing, it's a stretch to call it medicine. I mean, I think it's a stretch. Is there some medical components in the plant? Probably. But the other side has embellished their argument so much it's hard for me to believe it. But the American Medical Association, the American Cancer Society, wait, marijuana helps with cancer, right? That's what we're told. Well, according to the American Cancer Society, no, that's not true. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Psychiatric Association, all are against smoked marijuana. These are experts in the medical field, folks, that will tell you no on marijuana. If you get sick and you go home and Google what your ailment is, you're most likely going to get on one of their websites to glean their information. But yet all of a sudden we want to discount what they say when it comes to marijuana. But they blatantly say we're not for marijuana. Marijuana is illegal under federal law. It's the Schedule 1 narcotic, which basically says, you know, marijuana is not medicine. And because it's illegal under federal law, Dr. Arvin can't prescribe it, Dr. Hamilton can't prescribe it, Dr. Rao can't. Doctors in this county cannot prescribe this medicine. Your pharmacy, you can't go to the Rockcastle Hospital or Rockcastle Pharmacy or Mount Vernon Pharmacy or Broadhead Pharmacy and get medical marijuana because it's illegal under federal law. Now, there's a lot of pressure on that group to change the scheduling, and that may happen, but we're not there yet. So again, I think it's a stretch to call it medicine. The Detroit Free Press in January of 2019 cited a study by the University of Michigan where 790 medical card holders out of 270,000, that's a pretty good assessment, I think, 790 out of 270,000 in the state of Michigan, 56% reported driving within 2 hours of using marijuana. 51% said they drove while a little high. How does that make you feel out here on the road when the people using the medicine are driving while intoxicated? And also 21% reported driving while very high. And these are probably altered numbers because a lot of people probably won't truthfully admit, but that's what the Detroit Free Press captured out of this study from the University of Michigan. So not only do I think it affects the growing brain, it's a stretch to call it medicine. Number 3, it negatively affects the workforce. Pretty strong rumor we're going to get some industry in here coming up in the near future. We're going to need the workforce to meet that demand. But if our workforce is on the medicine, let me tell you how it affects them. Sorry, I'm getting animated. I'm getting in my preaching version here, and I apologize, but I'm passionate about it. The Huffington Post reported several years ago people who smoke marijuana, and the Huffington Post is a very liberal publication, okay? They don't believe like we do, but they reported this. People who smoke marijuana regularly over long periods of time tend to produce a chemical in their brain, it's called dopamine, in the brain that is linked to motivation. Exactly what I observed in my years of being a trooper and a detective. People are lazy that chronically use marijuana. Where's the workforce at, fellas? Ask yourself. Where are they? Where are they all gone to? Could it be that because more are using marijuana, more people are lazy? I don't think it's a far-fetched from the truth.
We just voted here within the last few months for a zero tolerance of drugs.
Yeah.
And that includes marijuana.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that. And I appreciate you letting me come today, you know,
And now the
because,
state legislature
yeah.
is trying to legalize it.
And they did that, and I'm glad you brought that up, Mike, because the governor wrote
Well,
an
his
executive
state-
order, and if the Republican legislature hadn't have jumped on board with House Bill 829 last year, then the governor's, his executive order was really it was gonna be smoke fest USA. But the Republican legislature had to kind of come in and soften up some of his hard lines. But the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependency says that people that chronically use marijuana are absent from work 77% more than non-users. Think about that. Users get injured 85% more often than non-users. So the propensity to get hurt is higher. The propensity not to show up at all for work is higher. Think about all your subcontractors and the people that they hire. What's their complaint to you? So-and-so will show up 2 days, then he'll miss 2 days. Now, there may be more at play here than marijuana, but again, you see the trend in the culture that this created. We know that marijuana use, reaction time is affected, coordination is affected, and vision is affected. Just medicine, though, right? I mean, that's what they tell us. It's just medicine, right? Again, I don't believe it is. So it negatively affects the workforce. And the last one, and I'm really passionate about this one, marijuana leads to violent tendencies. Uruguay was the first country to legalize marijuana in 2017. When they did that, the first country, the whole country just said, go smoke up, have at it, recreational use. The murder rate rose 64% in the first 6 months of 2018. Alaska, Colorado, Oregon, and Washington, all states that have gone on with recreational, we're for it, have shown drastic increase in murder rates and aggravated assaults. These are facts. Hard to argue them. But I picked out 3 cases for you, and I want you to hear these because I think it directly goes to what I'm saying here. On November the 14th, 2017, Kevin Neal went on a shooting rampage in Tahoma County, California. Now, we know those California folks are a little different anyway, but the reality is this. He killed 5 people. He wounded 9 others. He went on a shooting spree. He killed 5 people. He wounded 9 others, and he even killed his wife and his dogs. Prior to killing himself, he shot up a school, wounding 2 kids. He had a history of mental illness, and the only drug present in his tox screen upon his autopsy, the old medical marijuana. Richard Kirk, now this is an interesting case. He killed his wife on April the 14th, 2014 in Colorado. You see, Richard voted no on marijuana coming to Colorado. But Richard had some back trouble. And he thought, you know what, I'm going to give this stuff a try. So he stopped at the dispensary, if you will. He stopped at the dispensary on his way home from work. Here's an old boy that voted no, like many of us. Voted no. But he thought, you know what, maybe there is some medicine in this miraculous plant that God put. And I'm sorry for being facetious, but I just get so tired of hearing these arguments. So he stopped on his way home at a health center called Karma Candy Orange, and he stopped at the health center. That was the name of the facility, the dispensary, and he bought some medicine called Karma Candy Orange Ginger. Doesn't really sound too medical, does it, Lee Earl? No. But he bought some Karma Candy Orange Ginger. He went home, and 45 minutes later, his wife called 911 and said, my husband is acting strange. He's hallucinating. Would you send somebody over here? By the time the police got there, he had shot her in the head. Now, I'm not saying everybody that uses edibles and marijuana is going to shoot their significant other in the head, but I don't see how it bothers me that the other side wants to act like this is completely harmless. There's no issue. What's the discussion? That Darren Allen's a fool. He's a rant. Let him go. He don't know what he's talking about. But when I read cases like that, I begin to see a potential a whole lot of Richard Kirks right here in Rockcastle County. I've been against it from the start. And here I am arguing against it right here in the front door. And let me say this, ever how you all vote on this, you're still my friend, you're still my neighbor. You don't get paid what you're worth. I know my daddy used to sit in that seat a few years back, and you all are the lowest paid magistrates in the state. You basically do this job out of the goodness of your heart, because I know about what you make. But thank you for listening to me and ranting today for a few minutes. I appreciate you, Judge. But here's the last case that I pulled up. Camille Bala, a Florida woman who had a history of mental illness. Well, she gouged her mother's eyes out with broken glass after killing her in March of 2018. Now, this is according to prosecutors. This came out during the trial. Bala told an ambulance crew that she had just smoked marijuana. There's that old medicine again, showing up, making people making people make good decisions. She said she just smoked marijuana, and they found notes in her room with religious theme written messages about cleansing the soul. Maybe the mental illness, maybe the marijuana caused the mental illness. I don't know, but there's enough evidence there circumstantially to make me think that maybe it ain't medicine. And then the last thing, and I always kind of close with this when I have these talks. I met this woman back in 2018, Sally Shindale from Arizona. I met her at a conference, and she shared with me the suicide note left by her son, Andrew Zorn. Now, Andrew Zorn was a success by worldly standards. Andrew Zorn had a college degree. Andrew Zorn was a U.S. Army veteran in Iraq, served 2 tours. But he came home and he got smoking medicine because he had PTSD. And you know, in Kentucky now, you can get your medicine if you got PTSD. Well, he started smoking a little too much. He got addicted to it. And then it led to other things, as we so often know, because marijuana is a gateway. I mean, the other side will say, no, you're wrong, it ain't no gateway. It is a gateway. You all know this, you don't need me to tell you. And she shared with me this note, but here's a guy who was able to make an informed opinion. College graduate, U.S. Army veteran. His life was slipping away. In and out of jail, in and out of rehab. We know the story. Trevor could tell many a story like this. Well, finally, Andrew Stephen Zorn, in August of 2014, he had enough and he hung himself. But he left a note, and his mother shared with me this note. She is now an anti-marijuana activist. And you think I'm passionate, you ought to shake her hand. The note said, I will only get worse. Now again, this is a man who is capable of making a sound, good judgment decision. His note said, I will only get worse. My soul is already dead. Marijuana killed my soul and ruined my brain. Now, he didn't identify meth. He didn't identify fentanyl. He didn't identify heroin. All those things he'd used. But he realized that little old medicine plant that God put on this planet wasn't working for him, and he identified it in his suicide note prior to taking his life. Look, I've said enough. I've talked too long. I appreciate you letting me talk. I ask you vote no on any kind of marijuana business coming in this county. And if you're open to the idea, vote no now, and let's see what happens in 3 years, and then we'll revisit it. Most of the time you would say, well, let's let the people decide. Well, the problem is this, with that, I'm worried that there's so much misinformation and disinformation out there that the people won't make a correct and informed decision. It's kind of dating back to 1994. If you'll remember the seatbelt deal. When the seatbelts first happened, everybody was against wearing a seatbelt. No, the government ain't got no right to tell me what I can do, and I don't want no seatbelt. Remember all those? Y'all remember them days? And we were told by Frankfurt that we got to start wearing a seatbelt. Well, if we would have turned that over to the people to decide, most everybody would have voted no on wearing a seatbelt. But now, what do you think? We've seen seatbelts do save lives. They do enhance your livelihood if you're going to be involved in an accident. So the theory of let the people decide, there's so much money attached to this pro-marijuana movement and so many lies and deceptive practices out there. And I got questions. I watched Mr. Flynn's video last night. I'll commend them. I think they're trying. I mean, they're trying to not make Kentucky like the other states, and they're trying to separate some of the stigma attached to some of these marijuana states. But I've got some questions. What's the finished product going to look like? And they say, well, you're not allowed to smoke, but when I go to the dispensary and I get my finished product, which is nothing more than marijuana bud, fellas, then I pinky promise I ain't gonna smoke it when I get home. I promise I ain't. Come on, fellas. I mean, why do we have to walk to the end of the rainbow to find out there ain't no pot of gold there? Apply your own personal experiences. We've all dealt with people in our families. We've buried people in our families that have been addicted to this garbage, and it's projected them down a path of destruction. So the reality is this: everybody said, "Well, it bring money." Well, if you notice, Mr. Flynn was very, he was very protective. He said, we're going to make sure that these businesses are sustainable. He touches on that about 3 times. Well, that tells me that they're not going to let you old evil county people collect much money off of it. They're going to be watching you to make sure. And when people would roll right in and ask questions, there was a lot of, that's my interpretation, Well, what that tells me is there's a lot of, I don't know. So let's do what the good writer of Proverbs says, and let's lend an ear and see what's happening in these other states. And let's just hold on and settle down. Let's prohibit it from being grown in Rockcastle County, and let's see what happens up there in Fayette County, Madison County, and Laurel County. That's my plea, that you just vote no and kick it out of here altogether. Ever how you vote, you're still my friend, you're still my neighbor. God bless you, and I will sit down and talk.
Hey, Darren, if they put it on the ballot, sometimes there's only 20% of people vote.
That's right.
That's not a true reading.
That ain't a true reading. And I call them marijuana evangelicals. And all the money's on that other side, and they'll show up to vote. Meanwhile, our folks will maybe not get involved or, be intimidated or whatever. But that's just my thought. I appreciate you here. Thank you.
Thank you.